Gut health has been one of the biggest life-changing things for me. And one of the easiest ways that I can support my gut and my immune system and all the healthy good bacteria is through taking humble ingredients like you see right here and fermenting them. So today I'm going to show you one of the easiest fermentation methods and things you can ferment, which happens to be these humble carrots that I grew in my backyard garden. They're one of the simplest things to ferment. They pack a fantastic punch, so it's a flavor bomb, which is so great, but it's so good for your gut health. It's immune supporting, your digestive support, your mood, your energy. Literally the list could go on and on. This recipe is packed full of probiotics, but if you are a beginner and maybe you find yourself a little intimidated by fermentation and you want to dip your toes in, let me just be the first to tell you this is the recipe that you want to dip your toes in. It's a very beginner friendly. I also have done another beginner friendly fermenting video. You can catch it right up here, all on radishes. But I will say carrots are even simpler. There's even fewer steps involved. And most of the time, this is an ingredient that we can readily find available to us if we're not growing it out in our own backyards. But the best part is, friends, you do not need any sort of fancy equipment to do this. You're gonna need some humble old carrots and you're gonna need some salt and some water. Now, you can get fancy, you can add onions, you can add garlic, you can add spices, you can get as fancy as you want, but at the base, all you truly need are carrots, salt, and water. And so if you have those things in your pantry, then you're already halfway there, and I cannot wait to share this easy, beginner-friendly fermenting recipe with you guys today. So if you have those humble ingredients in your pantry, we can literally whip up this ferment and have it bubbling, activating, getting all of that amazing gut health properties in a matter of minutes. I don't know about you, but simplicity is kind of my jam, right? If I can have a fantastic dish or ferment in a matter of a few minutes, then I'm literally like, where is the dotted line? Let me sign. I am in. And so I am just so excited to share this with you guys in today's video. All right, so here's why I love fermenting carrots. They're crunchy, they're tangy, they're absolutely packed full of exceptional flavor. So if you grow carrots in the fall, they already take on a different note than if they were grown throughout the spring. They kind of take on this sweeter aroma to them, which is just really nice, and it complements a ferment really, really well. They are, like I mentioned, one of the easier vegetables that you can ferment, and most importantly, the one that you're probably here for is that they are naturally packed with all of these probiotics to, of course, support your gut health. Only are they, though, supporting your gut health, I have found that when my gut health is thriving and optimal, it affects every other system in my body. Specifically, as we're kind of transitioning seasons into fall, I really need to focus on supporting my immune health, and the way I do that is really activating and supporting my gut health even more than I have in the summer months. And so this is just a great way that I can continue to nurture my gut, but really set my immune system up for success as we start to transition our seasons from summer into fall as well. So for me personally, I kind of made an oath that I was going to start eating fermented foods of some form every single day, whether that was a couple carrot sticks, maybe that was a spoonful of kimchi or kraut in my breakfast or my dinner, just to see if I really could notice a difference and an impact by incorporating fermented foods, specifically fermented vegetables, in my diet every single day. And what I noticed pretty rapidly was that my energy was through the roof. I'll be honest, you guys, I used to rely very, very heavily on caffeine and a lot of it, right? And we know that is pretty compromising to your adrenals, specifically if you are a female. And so I noticed that I had a ton of energy and sustained energy at that. Any sort of digestive gut issue, bloating went away almost immediately. I will say that was one of the first things that I noticed, is that my gut just seemed so much happier. And overall, I just felt better. And so naturally, I want you guys to experience that too. And I don't know, I'm just on a mission to really kind of demystify how scary fermentation is. I think a lot of times we think you have to have all this fancy equipment, or maybe you need some sort of science degree. Same with sourdough, right? And so it's like, how do we take age-old techniques and really simplify them to work in our modern world with our busy lives that can actually support our health, our immune system, our attitude, our mindset, everything. All right, so first things first, you're gonna need around a pound of carrots. Now, I grew these carrots in my spring garden. They've been in cold storage for a little while now. So I pulled them out, gave them a good wash. I chopped the top and bottom off and peeled them. So that's gonna be the first step in this process. Then you have to decide, how do you want your ferments to be? I love these little matchsticks, and that's primarily because of how me and my family are consuming our ferment after they have fermented, right? But if you want to maybe add these in stir fries, maybe you want these to go in a soup or a stew, or maybe you want them in a salad, you might choose to do circular rounds. Just know, kind of think about how you want to consume these. For us, we're really just snacking on them. They're going in charcuterie boards, and we're more so eating the carrots raw after they've fermented, more so than adding them into some sort of dish. We're fermenting a lot of other vegetables that we are using up that way. So for me, the matchsticks are one of my favorite ways, but whatever floats your boat, whatever you like, do that. After you have finished cutting up and preparing your vegetables, we are going to be doing a brine-based ferment. So you would do a simple brine base if you were doing turnips, radish, beets, pickles, like so many different vegetables that use this preservation method. The other types of method would be like if you're making sauerkraut or something, right, where you're actually massaging the cabbage to create its own brine versus mixing up a brine solution and adding on top. But this is a very basic brine, great for beginners, and you can use this brine for, like I said, lots of other different fermenting recipes. So it's just great for beginners. I really recommend learning how to make this type of ferment first before you move into maybe some of the other ones that require just a little more know-how. So after we have cut up and prepped our carrots, we are going to make up the brine. It's actually really, really simple. So you're going to do 1 quart of filtered water with 2 tablespoons of sea salt. So just toss it in. And then another thing, I'll get like my little frother for coffee and stuff, and I'll just froth it. You can just make sure it's kind of dissolved. So you're gonna need some sort of vessel to pack them into. I have chose a pint mason jar, but choose your spices. I love to just use what we have available, usually always some sort of garlic. You could put onions. I've got a pickling spice here. I've got some fresh dill. And so I am going to put a healthy dose in the bottom, and then I'll also do a pretty healthy dose on top once I've packed my carrots in. But just know this is where the flavor really enhances. So be generous with what you put in here. Do not be afraid. You want that flavor powerhouse. So I kind of just tilt my jar on the side and I just start packing in. You want it really, really tight. So we're not trying to be delicate here, right? You can just kind of shove it in here as much as you want and just pack your vessel to the max. Mix up our brine and just pour it over. The biggest thing to be mindful of here is that the vegetables need to be completely submerged. When they are not submerged, that's when funky stuff with your fermentation starts to take place. And so if it's not submerged, that's when mold and things like that are going to start taking place. And so I'm using a weight because I ferment a lot. This was worth the investment for me. You could put some sort of follower like a cabbage leaf or a grape leaf over it. You could even stick a smaller glass jar in this if you needed to, but for me the weights have just been worth it. Ooh, we're gonna spill over here. All right, and then I have a fermenting lid which just self-oxygenates, which is nice. Again, not necessary. You could just put a loose towel over it. And so I've got the weight, I've got that, and then I'm just gonna loosely screw this on. And there we have our ferment. So it goes from this stage onto my shelf for about 5 to 7 days. So the longer that your ferment sits, the more it's going to take on that ferment tangy flavor. So I would recommend to start testing your ferment on day 5. Make sure you're always using a clean utensil. You don't want to contaminate at any portion, right? But if day 5 has got that crunch, that tang, you really like it, pull it. And what that looks like is you're removing the top, you're moving your weight or your follower, and you're just securing it with a normal lid, and then into your refrigerator that it goes. Now, right now you can see that my ferment is nice and clear. What's going to take place over the next few days is this brine is going to become very, very cloudy, and that is a great indication that fermentation's happening. So you actually really want to see that brine start to change colors because you know this stuff is working. So do you guys see how easy that was? This recipe is so beginner friendly. There's no vinegar, there's no preservatives, literally just natural probiotics forming in your kitchen on your counter. So now I want to break down these fermentation basics pretty quickly. In case anything starts getting a little hairy or a little squirrely, I want you to feel confident to make sure you have a beautiful, delicious ferment at the end of the 7 days, right? So the first thing you want to know is when you put your ferments on the counter, they need to be out of direct sunlight. Ideally, we're aiming for that 65, 75 degree mark, but on a shelf is fine, but you definitely don't want to store them on a windowsill or anything like that. I mentioned this is a 5 to 7 day ferment, but truthfully, you could start testing on day 3. And if you're just dipping your toes in and you've never had tangy fermented foods, it might be a good idea to start testing these on day 3, just so that you can familiarize yourself with what that taste is going to be like. And maybe you stop this ferment at day 3, but next time you do day 5. And then heck, maybe a few months down the road, you let it go that full 7 days. But just know you can pull this as early as day 3, especially if you're trying to just get your palate used to the fun fermented flavors. A few things you want to look for. Like I mentioned, the brine is going to turn cloudy. That is a great sign. Another thing you're gonna notice though is some bubbles are gonna start to form on the top. You're even gonna see them throughout. It's really cool to be able to just watch fermentation take place. So just know cloudy brine is normal, bubbles throughout and surfacing is of course what we are looking for, and it's definitely recommended to see those so you haven't messed anything up if you start to notice that in your ferments. And then if you start to notice this white film on the top of your ferments, it's called a calm yeast, and it's actually really common, so just leave it alone, don't do anything with it. Once your ferment is done, just take a spoon and completely scoop it off, but it hasn't messed with the integrity of your ferment at all. It's totally safe. I just take a spoon, skim it off the top, and then you're good to go. And then remember, your ferments should smell sour and tangy, but we're not going for locker room stinky, okay? If it smells rotten, something is probably wrong. We want sour, not rotten. So make sure you find the sweet spot. The question I get asked all the time is, all right, well, I've made these delicious, beginner-friendly, easy ferments, but now how do I actually consume them? A lot of people get hung up on not knowing how to eat them or prepare them. But honestly, I would eat and prepare them the same way you would a regular carrot. So for me and my family, we love just snacking on these. We're maybe eating them with charcuteries, we're packing them in lunch, eating raw, maybe with some sort of yogurt dip or a hummus dip, just like you would a carrot in its raw form. It's just gonna be packed with more probiotics, so it's gonna have a lot more nutrient density to it. It's gonna be way better. It's gonna support your gut health because it has all those healthy probiotics. But eat it the same way you would a carrot. Or if you want to cook with it, you can put it in soups, put it in stews, put it in a stir fry. Maybe you're cutting it up and sticking it on a sourdough sandwich. There's really no wrong way. Just know that the only difference in these and the carrots that you've been consuming already is that these are packed full of probiotics that are going to just boost your gut health and your immune system even more. So fermented carrots are one of my favorite entry points for fermentation. We have salt, we have water, and we have a very humble ingredient that turns into this living probiotic of just deliciousness. And so I love sharing this recipe with people who maybe are curious about fermentation and they're ready to dip their toes in. This is a very basic beginner-friendly recipe that I'm hoping will kind of light that fire for you to try your own fermentation at home. They are quick, they are easy, they're packed full of probiotics, they're gonna support your gut health, which is then gonna boost your overall immune health, and I cannot recommend it enough. So if you guys found it helpful and you want the full recipe, I've put it down in my description below, but go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It does a lot for our channel. It allows me to keep showing up and sharing these fun, easy recipes with you guys. And of course, if you tried it, I want to know. Leave a comment and let me know, what spices did you put in? What modifications did you put in? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Give me all the details down in the comments below. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you next week.